So we'll get this on the road here. I'm going to do little basic box turning. That is a rounded hollow with a lid. And I think I got into wood turning as a teenager and then adult. And then finally I went to the Clinton Art Festival, and members from the group here were given a demonstration, and that's when I finally figured out how to do some of the basics. And I think that might have been about 18 years ago or so. And and I was a beginner then, and I still am now. I've done a lot with vases and natural edge bowls and that kind of thing. I get my own wood locally. I don't get any, use, rare woods and that kind of stuff. But I've done a few smaller things recently. So I think probably 12, 15 years ago, I went to some of the national conferences and watched some people do these boxes. And then, a year or two later, it was like, well, maybe I'll try some of those, but damn, I don't remember how they did them. I took some notes, but there was no YouTube back then. And so then probably a dozen years ago, I went over to Dave Johnson's, who was in the club, and a great turner, and he showed me how to turn these things. And I actually turned one, and then did some rounded pieces and put those away. And then it was like a couple of years later, it was like, damn, I don't remember how Dave did those. So he gave a demo here about, I don't know, within the last half dozen years. And I finally sat down and took some diagrams and wrote some notes and figured out his routine. Dave passed away last year. He was a member of the club, a great guy, retired shop teacher, the most clever person as far as putting things together to make wood turning go well. Fantastic work. So this is his routine and his the way he did things. And he tended to do things. He did a lot of boxes, and he sold a lot of them, made them decorative, and so he was into efficiency. So there's some efficiency things here. I'm going to fast forward at a few spots here, but it will cover some basic turning items, some tool use, things like that. Please ask questions along the way, and we'll get things on the road. So basically, these things, you don't want them to move very much on you when you're turning them, because you've got the top and bottom with a little indented place for the lid and base to fit. And so using woods like I usually use with a lot of character, oddball little features can also create different tensions and little motions. So might as well start out, unlike what I did, start out with some straight grained, hardwood, maple, that sort of thing. Maple's always a good one. It's going to be strong and do okay. Although I got into it and kind of when I was using some cherry, walnut, elm, hackberry, what else? Use some decent piece of wood, which I did not do here. So the way he has this done, he uses a technique where he uses two chucks. That's the other thing. That might be limiting for some folks, but it did increase his efficiency. So we're just going to start out with a regular piece of wood that I got outside and cut last fall. Tried to get it dried down a little bit. In between centers, I tend to like to make a little awl mark in the center. You can either crisscross, or I like to use a little circular thing on the end that would match the diameter and find where I want it, put it in the center, make a little awl mark. I like to drill a hole there too, in case it isn't so important necessarily for boxes, but in case I want to recenter it with the pin in the headstock or tailstock. So I've got the center figured where I want it. Drill a little hole in there, and to make sure that in between centers we have the tailstock, and then we've got the the 4-piece prongs on the headstock, I don't like that to slip on me halfway through a turning, especially some of these ones where, so I like to get a mechanical indentation in the wood. I'll tend to, when I start these out, I'll go to the bandsaw and just make a little zip cut right going through the center that way, go 90 degrees, another zip cut. So I got a nice little gripper for the prongs here, especially if it's a really hard piece of wood and these things may not bite so well, or if it's a piece of soft wood, you don't want it to tear out on you and then have to go in and try to, you know, put it back in place, and it may not be quite right, re-straighten, it just messes it up, and I don't accept that when things have to do that way. So, in between centers, rough clean it, and just a little thing there, if you're using wood that has knots and bumpy, rough stuff, it's not really the time to use a so-called, you know, roughing gouge. I think you're better off knocking the speaker off like that. It's really better to use to use something with a finer, small point or edge that will knock those bumpy spots off individually. When you go across it with the broader, is this showing up here, by the way? Yeah. When you have this broad surface area like this, it tends to catch the bump, and you're getting more of a jiggly thing instead of actually peeling down those rough, bumpy spots. So I tend to use just a bowl gouge, and but use it in a scraping mode. So a bowl gouge can be used as a cutter on the bevel, but if you hold it perpendicular, it really is it's functioning as a scraper. So just about tore that off again. And so I've made sure that this is tight. Yeah, if you've got knots and things like that, you see when I go across this, it's just doing a little bit at a time, and you're actually gonna knock off bumps and lumps rather than have it bounce around. So this sort of thing, it's quite possible to tilt it up and get on the bevel and use a cut, so to speak, with the, you know, as a cutting motion there too. So basically, and again, I'm doing this kind of quick, just as a deal. So I'm getting the rough stuff taken off there. Then certainly a roughing gouge, which is really, I like a roughing gouge better for more finish work, but this one really lets, and actually, I think this is classic work for a skew too. So really, you know, person should learn how to do use the skew. I kind of view a roughing gouge and some of these gouges really as a curved skew, really. So, and this one again, you can hold it horizontal and make it scraping, and get an even diameter. When you're doing patterns in wood, going up and catching it on the bevel in a cutting motion, it's a great way to actually, you don't have to use it for roughing, you can use it for shaping. So we're going to get it smoothed up. Bam. And again, this is demonstration, so I'm kind of going, moving along here. There's still bark there as a demo. I'm just going to go ahead and I would get rid of that bark and get it smoothed up. Then the next step, getting a tenon on both sides for each of your chucks. In my case, I've got grips that are different sizes, so you have to keep that in mind for which I'm going to do on which side. And the tenons, I think it's just easy to, this again is using this as a, this is actually a parting tool. I use parting tools quite a bit for this kind of stuff. And a parting tool is basically a scraper, essentially. I'm holding it perpendicular to the surface here. And I've happen to have a dovetail shape on the chuck. I think maybe Steve mentioned this to me decade and a half ago. By the way, you can I've got fancy tools, but I happen to bring all my old Craftsman, and these were heavily sold and used 50 years ago. People upgraded to other, fancier things, and these you can find you always used to be able to find them at garage sales and stuff for next to nothing, and they're still high-speed steel. They're great tools. This one, you might take a look. This is a parting tool, but you can see that I'll put that, I think maybe you can see here where this is not cut straight across. I've got it sharpened at an angle there. And it's handy in particular to make the little corner down here on the tenon. And as well as other things later on here we'll see where you want to really get a point in to do some action. But that's making this kind of nice, easy way to do this. If anything, the chuck is going to grab and make contact. The most important point is right at this location on the outer edge of this component here. That's where you want the chuck to engage. So you don't want the chuck to be engaging inside here. Leaves room for wiggle. So if anything, this cut for making a tenon, I never make it actually perpendicular here. I go in so that it's farther in on the inside so that the engaging point would be on the very outer edge here. So I'm going to exaggerate this, but that's okay for the tenon. I'll pull it way out here just so you can see it. That's how I'm going to go in and make that cut there. Okay, so that's all. Same thing on the other side. I'll make it to fit the other, my other chuck and whatever that's going to be. I'm going to fast forward to so at the end of this, at the end of the production of the tenon on each side, this is going to be put in a chuck on this end. And by the way, when you're looking at this, the headstock, for the most part, is going to be holding on to the base of the box, and the top is going to be up here. That's the alignment right now. So after we do, and I'll just go through the basic motion here. After we do the tenon on this side, also I'm not going to use this. I'm not going to use this one. It's just for demonstration. We've done that. Dave suggested using basically a 1-to-3 proportion here, top to box. That's just his thing. So at this given point, it's between centers, but you can put it in the chuck and do this step, either way. So we're going to actually mark mark where we want the top. there, there. That's the bottom. This thing's kind of, too long, but that's okay. You get the idea. And this, at this point, can be mounted in the chuck. I like to actually take it off and put it in the chuck at this point. And then the next step is to actually part and separate the top from the bottom. Okay. By the way, on the sample one here, just so you can see, this might be more characteristic. So I've got a tenon on this side. This is a tenon. That one happens to fit one of the different types of chucks that have parallel grabbers. So at this point, we end up separating the top and bottom. So I'm just going to start that one so you can see what that's about. There is a little thing at this point that Dave brought up that we can pay attention to. So this cut, I'm going in straight, but this can actually be on the lid part. We can actually put a concave component to that. So I'm going to crank this over and actually make a little concave shape while we're doing the cut. And the reason is that when these come together, it's better to have this outer edge more prominent, so it will be the one that actually is resting on the ledge below it. You don't want the inside edge to be more prominent. That'll leave a gap here. So that's the reason at this particular stage to make this concave. So I'm not going to go right here. I would cut this all the way down, part it out. Bam. Just to speed things up, we'll say that's done. At this point, or actually before doing these two, we would have it in the chuck, and that's where I'm going to go right now. Let's see if we can get a chuck put on both that side. That will come out. I'm fast forwarding right now. We've just cut the bottom and top off. Now something that I did here that Dave didn't, Dave finishes the bottom off a little bit later on. I found that I like to do just a little bit of, I make a cut in here so I can do a little bit of finishing and shaping of that top. And the reason, a little bit earlier in the game here, because the chuck is a little bit in the way when you're trying to get a tool to work on the top here. So I ended up early on kind of just starting to shape up where I want the top and bottom. So this is a fast forward. We've parted the top from the bottom, and so we put the top off over in the side, mount it on a chuck. Whoa. I don't have a set screw on mine, is the deal. Whoa. Has anybody been Has anybody threaded on anything on this lathe? Whoa, it's that. What is that about? I use this other one. This one's actually really, really loose. I use this every day. Oh, okay. It just... I got clean threads totally. Does this thing go all the way in? I don't get this. I use this 2 or 3 times a day, and I well, I'm a little hesitant. Okay. Kind of don't like that. I guess if it catches, it'll just thread in more. So the next step is to hollow. And Dave, and I do too, drill the bottom and using a Forstner bit. Now, it's very common for hollowing this and the top just to use scrapers, doing the whole thing with scrapers, and that's fine. I happen to use a Forstner bit here. I'm going to scrape the top, and we'll do that with scrapers. And again, I fast forwarded this, so I drilled this out with a Forstner bit, or I'll use these ones you can buy, the self-threading ones, the self-pulling drills that you might use for other things. You can't do that in wood turning because this, you don't want this to kind of be dragged with the thread all the way through. You take that threaded point out, and I just happen to like these because they've got hex grips. They're pretty sturdy, but I've got Forstner bits too. If you use one of these types that's self-pulling, you take the thread out, you don't have anything that's hollowing it out there, so it just needs a pilot hole first to take care of that center where the thread would have been. So this goes in the tailstock, crank it in to the depth you want, mark it with a piece of tape, take this one out, put in the Forstner bit or the other in the drill bit, drill that in, boom, boom. So that takes care of for the moment, the hollowing out the bottom. Okay, so when that's done, and then we've also then taken the top and put that on another chuck after we cut it off. We're going to end up doing this next here. So the next step is to get the little notch in the bottom here that is needed to make this junction. So for that, there's longitudinal grain here. I like to have something that will sort of cut that initially so that it isn't ragged. You could go into it with a, let's say a parting tool or something like that this way, but there's a lot of, to me, kind of bending and these fibers that way. So I've typically used one of a couple things. One would be, again, going back to this parting tool with the pointed tip over there on the left and make the cut. I like to do that mostly. This is a spindle gouge that I've just shaped up to make a much more like a pointed, very, very much more pointed tip. And using that one would also make a nice little cut to start that. I've just kind of eyeballed how far down I want it. You could go, 1/8 of an inch. I got a little bit of wobble on this now since I've turned it, but I'm going to still go with it here. In other words, the wood has changed since I turned it and put it in on my lathe this morning. But I'm going to go ahead here, so it's not going to be perfect. So I'm going to make this little notch. I'm going to do a little cut there to start with, just to nice noise, huh? And then I'm also going to put a little bit of an angle on this, again, so that the point that's going to be matching and connecting with the lid on the outer edge of this cut is the prominent part. So I'm going to go in at an angle like this slightly. Okay, yikes. And on the part of doing the holes here, I end up, the diameter of this thing can vary, and I've used different diameters, but especially if you drill, you want to have it sort of matched up so that your thickness is where you want it. And I think if you want to leave, if you want a wider area to work with here, you can use a 1/2 inch differential between the diameter of your box and the diameter of the hole. That gives you 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch here. That means you would make a bite here about 1/8. So roughly a 1/2 inch. To make it a little bit thinner, you can go down to a 3/8 inch difference. If you have a 2 3/8 inch outer box, the inside drill hole could be 2 inches. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that is worth thinking about that when you're first doing this. So I'm going to, knowing that we've kind of done that ahead of time, I'm going to just kind of finish up this with a parting tool. I use parting tools a lot as a scraper. They are a scraper. I'll try to make this, okay. You like things quick and bad or slow and miserable? So I'm gonna do this kind of there, and I've left that fairly straight. It's a little bit more than halfway, a little bit more than what I might have normally gone with. So, okay, so we've got the hole drilled or scraped out, and we have the offset put in there. This is going to be taken off the lathe for a little bit. We'll come back to it. I don't get this at all here. Okay. And we're going to put the top on, and then this one, remember, if you haven't already done it, we've put a concave surface on this so that the outer edge would be the one to make contact. This one, commonly done just with basic scrapers. Now, you can certainly, I'm just going to try a couple of different things. You can use, this is I use the same one I had there, so don't complicate things. We can use this parting tool with or without a point on it. to kind of get a start on it. That basically is a scraper. It isn't very refined, but you can get some definitive lines made, and one of those would be actually kind of where I want the outer border of this to be, roughly matching up with the base. So I'm just going to make a little defining make a little defining cut at that point. You can do you could do a little bit of this with a scraping with a bowl gouge, just like you're hollowing out a bowl. You've got to be careful about doing the regular bowl cut wherever you're at. This is easy to kick back. You want to have very good control. It's nice to have a starting point like these things. So that's the that's kind of the cutting motion off the bevel. So I'm using this gouge as a cutter tool now. The back is resting against the surface that's just been cut, and I'm resting against it and going forward. And so the fulcrum here is actually not on the tool rest like you do when you're scraping. The fulcrum is on the bevel, and that's a cut. So just an example of how you can do that. And then you can use it as a scraper. You can use the bowl gouge as a scraper. That works. That's okay. It's common to, especially get down in the bolt. This is, you know, big tool and everything, but it's pretty common to use then the standard scrapers. You know, this one's curved, rounded for a rounded finish on the bottom. None of my scrapers are well, they're basically so we'll just get going this way. So this is used basically straight on or negative rake position. Now, none of my scrapers are negative rakes. You don't have to buy a negative rake scraper. If you just have the tool rest up slightly so it's aiming in a negative position, that does the exact same thing. It's a lot easier to sharpen them. So I've got a little bit of a negative tilt to this. The cutting's done from the burr on the top of the edge here, so it's negative a bit. But I'm cutting right in the center, or not cutting, but scraping on the center. So now okay, I've got an issue now with this. I like what's happening in there. But on the outside, I'd like to take off a little bit more, but I'm running into, this is too big of a radius for me. So you just take your other $2 old Craftsman high-speed steel tool, and that may have come as a badon or some other thing, but I've just flattened the end and made a smaller radius on that so that I can get a tighter radius, get more into the corner up here on this particular piece. That one I just had I might use on a tiny bowl. Yeah, so that fits in better. Again, it's slightly negative. You want to sharpen these a lot. That burr wears off, and it's just better, like all of your other tools, to sharpen it. Now, some people, like on the bottom of that, the bottom section, If you wanted to clean that up, and if you wanted to square shape to that, then you could use a squared off scraper. And the one thing, this one is made for doing the interior of boxes. If you use this one with a 90-degree, if the straight component is 90 degrees, you're going to bump into the bottom when you get over the corner here. You're going to be rubbing on the bottom of this tool. So there's two things to do to get around that. You take off a lot of this bottom on the sharpening process. You just knock it out of there. But it's still in the way here. So the other thing you can see with this is that this roughly squared off corner, the end of this is actually at an angle. And this can be made at a 90-degree angle, but not in line with the axis of the tool. So I'm not going in with a straight like this. The 90-degree takes place when I have this out like this. So if you want to do it a straight cut on the bottom there, you can have your tool rigged up like this to get a clean 90-degree angle all the way in the corner there. So that's just a matter of having a different type of scraper for a different shape on the top there. The next step here is making the notch for the top. It's always good to take a look at your model so that you don't go up here and make the notch on the outside and say, oh, dang it. So this is made on the inside, and then this needs to be done slowly and repetitively in little bits at a time so that it fits right. And the advantage of having two chucks is that you don't have to take it out, take one out, put it back in, and so on to do any adjustments. They're all ready to make adjustments. So on this, I would take I would kind of, measure up basically what I've got here, about where I want to go with it, halfway across there, 2 1/16, and let's do this the other way. I'm going to measure here what I've got. And that happens to be just darn near right at 2 inches. And so I'm going to get close, but don't overdo it. Okay. How many people want the screech, and how many would like the silent one now? Silent? Okay, we'll go with it. I didn't mind the screech. So I'm just going to do this, but I know I'm way underdoing it here, but I just want to know where I'm at. And I'm going to look here, make sure I'm doing this on the correct thing on the inside. And so there's this little process here. You can measure it, but I think having okay, we go up there and know that we got to go some more. And I already knew that because we weren't going to overdo it. And then, I usually don't do this stuff in a hurry. I just take my time. I like to take time. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, I was going to go through this process, and when you get to a certain point, you've done it 2 or 3 times, and you're still taking it down, then you finally say, damn it, I'm going to get it done this time. And then you go in, and then, of course, it's too much, and, you don't want to do that. So it happened that I took a bite there, and it seems like it's just about right. Now, that actually was kind of by accident. I should have had really 3 or 4 passes at that. I got to make it a little bit deeper, I think. So that was just kind of luck. By the way, I haven't been doing sanding and stuff like that. You can do that at different areas. So that fits on, and I never get them to fit kind of that nice when I'm really trying hard. And here I'm just kind of bulling through it, and it's going. So I'm satisfied with that. So, okay, now what do you do here? I'll mention what Dave's routine was. By this time, he would have. This comes off, first of all. Just to make it simple, the only time this top is on here is basically to hollow and do the notch. Otherwise, it comes off. So let's get that off just so that we don't have mind-boggling confusion about what's where. That base is on essentially all the time, except for when we put the top on to hollow it out here. So the base goes back on here. I should have said, because I don't do it like Dave does. While this was on, this would be cut off. Okay, sorry about that. Let me. Now I did this shaping up here. I tended to do this a little bit early on because instead of having it in the chuck, I would have it on in between centers, and I could get my tool around to do a little shaping here at the top. And if you want to use a spindle gouge to do it, and you're coming around like this, you don't end up, bumping into your equipment here. That's why I did it early. Dave would just end up cutting it off straight. But after doing this little notch and curve around, then it is time to cut it off. And that would be done kind of all at the same time. Let's just get that out so you can see, and I'll show you how he goes with his efficiency. And so I like to put a little bit of an uphill climb on this and leave myself a little bit of room to take off a little bit more with a spindle gouge. So this is not going to be exactly where I want it. I'm giving myself a little extra room. Well, the other way is, I'm kind of used to this with bases. I might finish this top off kind of just probably should have left myself a little room here, but yeah. I'm pushing it here a little bit, so this is a lot more coarse than I'd like to do. And, okay. So this will come off now. We're done with it. And, okay, so we've hollowed it, made the notch, and cut it off. So then this comes off, and we're done with this chuck. The rest of it is done with the other chuck. Get that. So that thing went down here. So the way Dave would finish this off then was to put that on and just finish it right there, the top. And I've actually kind of adapted this, and I don't know if Dave was pretty big on tape and various things like that. I'm not so comfortable, and I probably wouldn't always get as nice of a turning and fitting that he did. But I've done this and had better tape than this, just so it doesn't fall off. And there's a reason I had this tape in the corner of the shop. It should be in the wastebasket. Okay. So basically, there, and then a little spindle gouge work here. I'm going to get rid of that little nubbin for a second. Not that I don't mind nubbins there. And then there is, if you have a little bit of looseness there, I've got just some little gadgets to. Oh, this has got a point in there. Okay, if you take the point out, this fits in right in and surrounding this, so you can go up against here to hold on to it, right? And a little bit of kind of foam rubber type stuff there for a little protector. And I could knock that out and do it, but I'm just going to show, that's just to stabilize. I'm one that I would tend to leave a little bit more incline when I parted that out with the parting tool, and finish it off with a little smoother operating spindle gouge. But I hardly have any, I can hardly have any room for an incline here the way I left it. But you can kind of see what you can do there then. Bam, not too bad. Sarge, Sarge passed away this last year or two, along with a lot of them. But early on, he did some excellent turning and work, and was really a good mentor for everybody here. He did, and he mentioned to me early on, he had all this really nice work, but he had kind of something he blew a little bit. And most of the time, these things are fixed with the tools. You can use sandpaper and so on. Most of the time it's tool. But he saw that and he said, oh, that's nothing that a little bit of 60 grit won't take care of. So there's a seasoned turner who, it's like, oh, okay, he's going to use 60 grit to get rid of that. He's not going to go and use the tool. So there the top is done. And then the other thing that Dave did, now I will now at this point here finish the bottom with spindle gouge here. I got a little bit of bounce. We'll see what happens here. So I'm going to put a little bit of a rounded edge here. I'm going to come around here on the bottom. This is the kind of thing with the top, and sometimes if I'm backed up into this corner here, I get into troubles trying to use this, but I've got plenty of room here. This makes some more room. I'm going to bring up another one of these very expensive tools here. I'm pretty comfortable using a parting tool here, to be truthful, but I do like the idea of kind of rounding this off with the spindle gouge. And so when you're coming around like this stuff can get in the way. So there, and then this is how I do it. By the way, I only sharpen one side of the parting tool. It's really a scraper, and I just do one at a time. So I'll sharpen this bottom edge. There's no need to go back and sharpen the other one every time. You sharpen that one, and I label that as up. So I use that as up. That's where the burr is. And the next time I'll sharpen the other side. So I'm comfortable using just the parting tool to actually put a little concave shape on that. Bam. Now, what Dave did here at this point, the reason he had longer pieces here, he would actually make a long tenon here that was the shape of the inside of the bottom, and flip it around and put it on this piece. He'd use this as a tenon. And again, he had this efficiency thing, bam, bam, bam. So, and he probably could do it, you know, without even thinking or measuring, probably. So, top, he'd finish the top similar to this. Right now, he'd just part it off, make the tenon over here this diameter, flip this around and slip it right on, and he had a holder for it. I tend to, I'm used to doing this with vases and all my bowls and stuff, because you can't get around the natural edge ones. You can't lay those down flat to sand or do the bottom or any of that. You better get as much as you can done from while you can here. So, yeah, I just end up porting it off and then sanding them. And when I get down towards the end, I like to use a narrower parting tool, just so there's less to catch, and oh, I can slow this down a little bit too, I guess. I don't want it to go any more than 10 or 15 feet if it flies off. You ready? Frank, you're awake and ready? Okay. This may not be that pretty here, but we'll see. So, a little bit of sanding there. And you can take a little more care, even with a parting tool, to get one single nice flow down there and not end up like that. So I think that does it here. I don't need to drag things out anymore. Oh, the squeak came back. That is pretty cool. We'll keep that going. Actually, yeah. If your kids are bothering you, just, okay. So any questions, though? Or actually additions to with some of the pros? And Greg, you're doing all kinds of little stuff. And do you have any thoughts or anything? And I think it's a good time to have some commentary on what others might think about, or questions or anything.
Your chuck makes me kind of nervous. I hope you recall that.
You know, that has never, ever happened, and this thing is really barked up. The threads on this, and I, like, never ever have had this happen as of today. I don't understand one bit what that's about. We'll see. This one is really messed up, and I don't know if it's just, don't know. We'll find out. I'll let you know. So I think that's all, unless there's questions or comments.